You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Today, we're going to depart from our usual format for two reasons. First, there will not be an Inside the Headlines segment, so that we can go directly to our longer than usual but very important conversation. This week, it's with documentary director and producer, the award-winning Deeyah Khan, who returns to the program to talk about her powerful new documentary, Behind the Rage, America's Domestic Violence, and the startlingly new insights that the film uncovered. So, I hope you'll stay for that. And the other reason is that we have a longer than usual Fighting Words segment at the end of the program, and I hope that you'll remain with us to hear it. So, without further ado, let's go. Our guest for the conversation today is Deeyah Khan, the documentary director and producer who has won 2 Emmys, a BAFTA, an RTS, and 2 Peabody Awards in over a decade of making empathetic and unflinching films that deal with some of the most important and polarizing issues confronting us all today: extremism, violence against women, inequality, racism, and social exclusion. Released in 2012, Banaz, A Love Story, her first multi-award-winning documentary, chronicled the life and death of Banaz Mahmood, a young British Kurdish woman murdered by her family in a so-called honor killing. Deeyah's second film, the BAFTA-nominated Jihad in 2015, involved 2 years of interviews and filming with Islamic extremists, convicted terrorists, and former jihadis. White Right, Meeting the Enemy, in which she interviewed key figures of the American far right and was on this program to discuss it. It won her a second Emmy Award in 2018, and in 2020 she released 2 films on American politics, one of which, a BAFTA-winning America's War on Abortion, tackled the divisive issue of reproductive rights, and the second, the Peabody-winning Muslim in Trump's America, charting the impacts of Trump's presidency on American Muslims. Then, in 2022, she directed and produced Behind the Rage, America's Domestic Violence, in which she meets domestic abusers to find out why they hurt the women they love. In 2010, she founded her media, arts, and education company, Fuse, with the aim of creating space for more inclusive and diverse stories. And in 2016, she was appointed the first UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador for Artistic Freedom and Creativity. And she has become a dear friend. Here is Deeyah Khan. Deeyah, welcome back to the program. I'm so glad to have you back here.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love speaking to you, so thank you.
Well, you are busy trotting the globe, as they say, making films, doing all sorts of good works. But the newest work that you've been doing has been on women and violence, yes? On Behind the Rage, what is it called?
That's right.
Yeah. Talk
yes,
about the
Behind
new
the
film.
Rage. Yeah. So I have, as you know, I've been involved in women's rights work for a really long time, and then specifically within that, violence against women is something that has just been a huge focus of what I've been interested in, and a lot of the activism that I've done, and then also the very first film that I did actually was also driven by my sort of frustration that we weren't talking about these issues in the way that centers women. And their experiences. And I've wanted to do something around domestic violence again for a really long time, to look at this sort of private, quote unquote, violence. And obviously with, COVID, with, it becoming even more apparent, I think, to people within our societies that, may have thought that, is this a thing of the past? Obviously, it's not.
Oh my God, no.
But also, no, exactly. But also, as I just said, I've always liked and wanted to center women. But one of the things that's been really bothering me for quite some time, and I don't know if you feel the same, but every single conference, any kind of women's rights event that I've ever been to, it's packed with women in the audience. And if I'm lucky, there's a few guys there. Right?
Oh, I know.
And I'm very grateful that those guys are there. but for the most part, it's women.
Yeah.
And that's always just bothered me because, domestic violence
takes two.
It's not women doing this to themselves.
No.
Exactly. So there is somebody else involved in the picture. And that somebody else is never represented or reflected in these conversations. And so I've just, with the years, increasingly become more and more frustrated with this, that as a society, I feel like we are asking just consistently the wrong question. We keep, asking, why is she with him? Yeah. Why doesn't she leave? Why does she keep going back? Why doesn't she report him? Why doesn't she? Why doesn't she?
All of which are blame the victims.
Really ask.
Yeah, all of which are...
Exactly. It frames it all around, it's her responsibility.
Yeah.
And she needs to shift whatever she's doing somehow. And the perpetrator himself, we are excluding from the entire picture. I want to ask the question, why does he do it? And how do we stop it? Yeah. Or how do we reduce it at the very least? And so that's what I finally decided, that I was going to try to tell that more complete story and try to put the spotlight actually not on her, but on the abuser himself.
How fantastic.
And
we know certain things. Yeah. We know that battered children, boys, grow up to be batterers.
Yes. And
we know that battered children, girls, grow up to be battered.
Yes.
So that the girls internalize it, the victimhood, and the males, the little boys, grow up and externalize it. They do what they saw
and imitate it.
Exactly. There were some groups in the West Coast. I think, in fact, you and I talked about this when you began filming, and I tried to find them that had existed years ago for incarcerated men who had been incarcerated for battery, for murder, even in some cases. And they had an amazing effect, but then they went out of existence, and you don't hear more of them anymore. So go on.
No, so it was, as you can imagine, it was, once I decided, okay, so I'm going to put the spotlight and the responsibility really of this issue where it belongs, which is with the person who's making the choice to commit this violence. But then, of course, the practicalities of that, of actually finding men who will, and I went for heterosexual relationships because that's, in terms of the numbers.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's very, very clear how severe that is. But finding men who are willing to speak and finding men who are willing to put their hand up and say, yes, actually, I am that guy, and show their face and be willing to, say who they are, it took forever. So I started in the UK, could not find anyone willing to speak. And the only men that I did find, like you're saying, there are these, battering intervention programs in the UK and in several countries and also in the US.
Right.
And I was in touch with several of them, and some of them put me in touch with the some of the guys that they've been working with. But in the UK, at the very least, every single guy that I tried, they were like, maybe I'll speak, but if I do, I'm not showing my face. I'm not. You can't use my voice. You, in fact, put an actor in. Even as a silhouette. I don't want anything recognizable about me. And I was like, well, I'm not. I can't make a film with a distorted voice and a blob on the screen. I want people to see your face. Yeah. And so nobody agreed. So eventually, I came to the US and started speaking to groups here. And after a long, long, long time, finally started making some progress and finally started getting guys to agree. And one of the men that I spoke to killed his wife 32 years ago, served a 30-year prison sentence, came out during COVID. He's in his 60s now, and has spent a lot of time, obviously, inside trying to process, so he continued actually being violent after he was arrested and imprisoned, continued being very violent and was put into solitary confinement and continued. But after a while started, I don't know if it's age or what began it, but he starts actually reflecting and starts looking at himself and not just blaming her for having tried to leave her. I mean, she did everything, quote unquote, right in a way. She put distance between her and him. She tried to leave him. But as we know, when it comes to murders, most women are at the highest risk from their partners when they actually leave.
Precisely.
And that's what happened to her.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, God.
And that's sadly what happened to her. And the killing was very, very brutal, which he doesn't remember the details of. He's only read the autopsy report of him having stabbed her multiple times. And then he read an article while he was still in prison, which was actually about, it was a Washington Post article, he said, which was actually about a homeless organization that also, some of their kind of highest numbers of people that they come across are women who are escaping domestic violence. Yeah. So one of the stories focused on this young woman who had to escape with her 2 young children and barely survived her ex, basically. And he read this article, and then something happened in him. And so he reached out to this charity and said, look, I am that guy, except mine didn't survive. Mine didn't make it. And I don't know why I'm contacting you. I don't know what to do, but I know that I need to do something about this. So where he sort of landed eventually in his life is that and where he is now, is that he wants to work with other men. He doesn't want what he did and what happened to his ex-wife
to define him,
to happen to anybody else.
To
define him, or for it to continue.
Or for
he wants to speak to men.
Wow.
And so that was really interesting to me because, again, as I said earlier, you and I, Robin, we can speak till we're blue in the face.
Yeah, and I know.
But
it
doesn't mean that guys
it.
like that are going to listen.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah,
So this is not a woman's issue. That's why it frustrates me when people say, well, women's rights and violence against women, it's a woman's issue. It's not. It's a men's issue.
Of course.
And they have to deal with this, and their behavior has to change. And I've had, several arguments even with some of my feminist friends who are like, don't do this film. Just don't do it. Don't give them any time. Don't speak to these guys. And, and why should we speak to them? Because, while women are living under bridges because of what these guys do, why should they get to go to these programs and
but it's not,
and
that
talk about their
doesn't
feelings?
Solve it. That doesn't, that's just spinning.
It doesn't. But I understand that feeling.
Oh, of course I do.
And I felt like that for many, many years too. I'm sort of going, why does he get, I agree. But we needed to stop. How many shelters are we going to build? And how many women are we going to hide and protect from one perpetrator, and then he just moves on and gets better and better and better.
That's right.
And
we need to be
women.
We need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. I mean, we can do both. We can
yes,
take
we
care
can
of,
do both.
Address the problem of displaced women there who are really internal refugees. At the same time, we are exploring, why does this happen? Or even if we know,
and how do we stop it?
How do we stop it? Yeah, because we know how it happens.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that was the whole point of making the film, and so meeting Daniel, which is the man who killed his wife. So it started like that, and then I started getting more and more groups who were willing. Or men who attended some of these groups who were willing to speak. And so the whole film, I get to speak back to different guys who have done different things to women and are in different parts of the process. All of the ones that agreed to speak to me are on the other end of it, in terms of they are trying to do something about it. They are better, quote unquote. They are no longer using violence. And then some of them are trying not to, but I can tell, you can tell there's something still there. And what was interesting in terms of learning for me of what is it? Like, what's the point? Why do something like this? Why? Because Robin, I've filmed very, very violent people in the past, and male violence is something that I focused on for a very, very long time.
Yeah, and you
I've
filmed
never really
racists, and you filmed. You have gone into the lion's
I've
den.
filmed convicted terrorists. I have filmed convicted terrorists. I have filmed people who have, blown up abortion clinics. I have filmed people who, have gone to jihad and white supremacists and Klan people. and all of this, and militia guys in this country as well. And I have never been in any real way afraid of those guys, ever.
Yeah.
Right? I've been uncomfortable, but I've never been afraid.
Right.
And part of my sort of thinking around that, or you know, when I look at them, I think, okay, well, these guys are able to dehumanize people on the other side of them because they don't know them, they have very little contact with them, or very little understanding of these people, and that's how they're able to cut off sort of their own humanity enough to be able to dehumanize somebody else.
Right.
But these guys, like the night before I met Daniel, suddenly I start feeling uncomfortable, and I start feeling nervous and worried and scared, which is a very new feeling for me. Yeah.
Why?
Because I'm sitting there at night thinking, this is a different category of a guy. This guy is able to inflict violence on somebody he does know, on somebody he claims to love, somebody he most likely has children with, somebody he shares a bed with, hugs, kisses, shares life. So this is a different guy, right? This is his capacity for violence and his capacity to dehumanize another human being is a different, just at a different level. Yeah. In my mind, is what started sort of happening. And I've never done this before. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I've never, in filming all these years with all these very violent men, I've never sort of, I mean, I'm always sensible, but I've never, like, you know, changed the room or anything like that. Right. Like we film wherever the light is, wherever things work, that's how we're going to film. And I typically sit very close to people.
Oh, I remember. I remember in the film about the white racists, you know, where they were calling you a mud woman, because you know, there you are, mild-mannered, brilliant filmmaker, Asian, feminist, all the things that they can't stand, and female.
That they hate.
And, you know, and you were, you know, talking with them like they were a brother. And in fact, you turned one of them around. So I can understand this, but oh, how fascinating. So then you did, however.
It was fascinating. So I did go to this interview, and then which was in a hotel. And my colleague, it's always just myself and a colleague. And my colleague said, you know, this is where I'll put the chair because we usually use natural light. And he said, you know, this is the best, you know, position in the room, blah, blah. So that's what we'll do. And I said, look, we can't do that. You have to move him. He's like, but this is the best light. I said, no, you have to move him. You have to put him at the other end of the room. He's like, why? I said, because you're putting him in front of the door, the exit. And I want the exit open. And I'm saying this out loud to you because but I swear, like, I've never felt like this before.
I can so understand
thought of
it.
Stuff like that before.
I can understand it.
But I spoke to then a domestic violence survivor, a brilliant, brilliant woman. She's briefly in the film. Leslie is her name. She's an author herself as well, and she said, I said to her, look, what's the risk of these guys? You know, I'm sitting very close to them. They've already done the things that they've done. You know, what's the risk to me? And she said, there's no risk to you. I said, but I'm a woman. And she said, but the trigger is not that you're a woman. I said, well, but what is it then? She said, the trigger is intimacy, and the trigger is love.
Oh,
you being a woman isn't, because in my mind, I'm a woman. He beats on women. That's
right.
Enough. I'm a woman, and I can look at him the wrong way. I can say something, or my tone can be whatever, and he might just grab and reach me by the throat.
Exactly.
Isn't what I'm saying? And she said, no. But then, of course, in my mind, I'm going, well, but the conversations we're going to have are going to be very intimate. So there isn't intimacy.
There's that.
She said, no, there's love. But there is love.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really important and really telling, actually, and a really important part and that's what I started learning also as I started interviewing these
But
guys,
that is such a flattener of every possible hope, because if love is the trigger, then we are trying to cut or unravel a dense knot of dependency, independence. You know, I mean, my God, what the woman brings to the relationship, what the man brings to the relationship, how it goes wrong, where it goes wrong. Oh my God, this is a remarkable film.
Fascinating. It's fascinating, and what I sort of come to learn from the different programs that I would film is some of them were based around the huge hero of mine, Pence. in Minneapolis. She's a feminist. She's passed away now, but she was in Minneapolis, and she developed this incredible intervention program for perpetrators, because she was sort of like us in the sense that she'd always worked for women and then realized we can't work for women if we don't make sure he stops as well.
Yeah.
But a lot of her model, revolves around accountability. So you have to get to the accountability part, which is really, really good. And you take responsibility and you sort of go from there.
Uh-huh.
But what was interesting is then I've come across other models that are more trauma-centered. And I know, even I'm getting sick of the word trauma. Like it's getting used a lot for a lot of things.
It's used
glibly. Yeah, it feels a little. Yeah, it feels a little bit like an out in some ways.
Yeah.
However, seeing what the guys went through in some of these processes that they were put through, what I saw seemed to work the best was they're not able to have, because I kept going, why doesn't he have empathy for her? Like, where is it? How can he not see what he's doing? Along their life, there are things that happen to these men where they become more and more divorced from themselves.
So they're dissociated,
right,
from what they do.
Yes. Yes. And they have very little kind of compassion or empathy for themselves, let alone for anybody else. So they have been dehumanized in their earlier life. So some of them, like you said, it is that they've witnessed violence against their own mother. For others, it's experiences of sexual violence or other violence towards themselves,
right,
or other traumas. And not having the capacity or the support to process it, and it just sitting there. And when you then fall in love and you get into these intimate relationships with a woman, suddenly you're vulnerable, because what does love do? It makes you vulnerable, right? It makes you,
of course,
quote unquote, weak. It strips away all the stuff that you can keep on outside, but not with her.
Mm-hmm.
So she sees your tender parts. She sees your weaknesses. She sees your shortcomings. She sees all of it.
And if she ever dares cross you, or even is perceived to have crossed you, she's the enemy.
Yes. Yes. She is the enemy. She goes from being the angel that's saving you to the devil who's out to destroy you. So their reaction to her is therefore severely, severely ruthless and violent, because she's the person that does see him, that truly, truly sees him. So not me, not you, not anybody else, but she does. And he can't stomach it. He cannot deal with the fact that it's all out. And that he is both humiliated, shamed, and kind of emasculated in front of this woman. And I mean, some of the programs that I saw being quite effective was they don't start with their behavior today. So they don't start with, and they don't go, beating women is bad. Okay, they don't start there, because it means nothing to these guys. So they start with themselves, because many of them are very self-centered. Right? But they start earlier. So they sort of hold their hand, or emotionally make it possible for them to walk through and talk through things that they have buried and have not been able to talk to, work through that and help them reconnect sort of the cables back to themselves again. And once they can do that, then starting to make the connections of when they felt small, of when they felt controlled and dominated. And now, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right? So they're paying it forward. They're taking all their pain and all the humiliation and the violence that they had and the helplessness that they felt, and they're paying it forward. So they're realizing that, which many of them, obviously, most of them don't realize. Once they start connecting some of those dots is when some of their now current behavior starts being interrupted.
Yes,
but even that's not a straight line. Some of them reduce violence. Like one of the guys said, he said, and many of them use addiction terminology, which is really interesting. That the adrenaline, the control, the obedience,
it makes sense,
that they get it's like a high, and it's intoxicating, and I want it, and I want it more.
Yeah,
because I'm powerful.
That's right. Yeah, we've always said
everywhere
it was
else. I'm nothing.
We've always said it was about power. It was like
and
rape.
Even they say it.
Rape is not about sex.
Exactly.
It's about power.
Not about sex.
That's right.
Exactly.
Oh, when it,
And so, yeah.
no, I mean, when
Sorry.
is this film done and ready, and how can we see it? And oh my God. And what's its
So this was
name?
just done end of last year, Behind the Rage. So it was because that's what the film
Yep,
attempts to do, is to try to get to the sort of inner reasons why. Because we see the rage, we see the brutality and the consequences of it,
of course.
but why and what's behind it, and how do we get to that? And people are making some, incredible progress on that front, which has been really remarkable for me to see. So I would say, so the film is called Behind the Rage. It was finished end of last year, and it will be in the U.S. sometime this year. I don't know exactly when yet. But what's been some of the biggest sort of key or sort of surprising bits for me was what I said earlier, the fact that intimacy and love is the trigger, because that's where his vulnerability is.
Yeah.
That's where he becomes more human, and therefore feels like he has everything to lose, basically. So that was really key for me. Secondly, for them to use the word power and control, and not for you and I to be using it, was really interesting to hear.
It's
huge that they know that,
yeah,
and that they can confirm that for us. Thirdly, what was really powerful for me, like, and any woman I can get my hands on, I try to tell her now, is even their advice, the guys, is leave. Even though they don't let her leave, and they're going to kill her if she leaves.
That's right.
But even their advice is, the moment you see any signs like that, you have to go, because it's not going to get better. They say that it's not going to get better, and next time you might not get to call the police.
That's right. That's right.
So even they say that. So they're telling us leave. They're telling women go. And the last thing that was really kind of confirmed a lot of things for me was the vast majority. I would say maybe 2 or 3 out of everybody that I ended up filming did go and get help because of their partners. The vast majority do not seek help because of her. They do it because of the consequences for them. When people say, "Oh, you have to hit rock bottom, you have to this, you have to that," for any kind of serious change to take place, whatever it is in life.
Right.
For these guys, so this is why, when people say, "Oh, we should only do therapy and we should only this," and the punitive nature of the legal system shouldn't. No, it needs to be both. Very, very clear to me. It absolutely. So the things you and I have fought for absolutely still apply. There has to be.
But there also needs to be a deterrent. But there also needs to be a deterrent of some.
Yes, exactly. So we need, as we know, the societal acceptance of this, which there is societal acceptance.
Yes.
I don't care what people say. We do accept it. Otherwise, it wouldn't continue the numbers that they are. So that has to go away. Men, publicly, culturally, socially, have to start taking this issue up as their issue.
Yep.
And to help and to make it not okay to do behavior like this, and make it okay to seek help. That this is something that's not carved in stone. Violence is a choice. It's not something that's inherent.
Right.
It's you can choose not to. And I think our criminal justice system absolutely has to take this seriously. These guys should be prosecuted. The sentences should be serious enough for it to hurt them. One of the guys, he brutalized this one woman. He was speaking in this group, brutalized this woman and got 3 years.
Ugh.
And when asked himself by the facilitator of the conversation, who's a feminist herself, she said, how long do you think you should have gotten for everything that you've done? He said, easily 10, 15 years. Easily. He's saying himself.
They know.
Yeah?
Yeah.
They know. So there has to be social consequences, and cultural consequences. There has to be criminal consequences. And then we have to, obviously, on the other end of it, we can't stop fighting the usual fights of, we have to make sure she's kept safe. We have to make sure she can financially survive. We have to make sure her kids can continue. All of those fights still have to remain.
Yeah.
But we also need resources. The fight for resources, like in the UK, and I think some of the challenges here are the same, where you see that it becomes either or. The resources around violence against women or domestic violence, it's perpetrator programs, but if that happens, it's at the expense of programs that support women. And
That's
so you
right.
can't do that. They both have to exist.
Exactly.
And coexist. They both have to be dealt with, not one instead of the other.
Ugh.
And people shouldn't have to fight for the same pot of money, but that's just the nature of how a lot of this funding stuff is set up. But so I think, he's not going to change for you.
No.
Is as rude and awful as that sounds, but that's what I would say to women. He's not going to change, because he might be one or two rare guys that do, but he's going to change because of the consequences to him. And so while he does, go.
Yeah.
You have to go.
Yeah.
If you can bear it, you have to go make yourself safe.
Deeyah, this is some of the first, and I've been at this a long time, but this is some of the first fresh thinking on the subject that I've heard maybe ever.
It was eye-opening. Robin, it was eye-opening for me, because I've been so entrenched in this issue for a really long time, and have all sorts of very strong feelings about it. But to hear it and to see it, and then to hear the guys themselves was really uncomfortable. Obviously, it was really difficult for me, but also incredibly liberating, because you sit there going, okay, it's really ugly everything he's saying, and it's really hard for me to accept a lot of it. But I'm so glad he's saying it, because in a way,
yes,
we can deal with.
Yeah. Where can people see this?
We know how to relate to some of it.
Where can people see this? Is it on the website?
Nowhere.
Oh my God!
I should probably put it up for a little while. Because we're right in the middle of conversations with different distributors in the U.S. But what I'll do is, maybe I should put it online or something like that for a little while, so that your audience can see it. But it's been an eye-opening experience for me.
If they go to your website, will they maybe get guidance on where they can see it until
yes, they can do that.
Okay,
yes,
so
that's a good idea.
And to say again your website.
So it's Deeyah.com. So DEEYAH.com.
Okay, so at least we're not
Or reach me on Twitter or something, and I'll send you a message.
Okay, fantastic.
So we don't get into trouble.
This is as usual one of your extraordinary accomplishments. I can see Emmys and Oscars down the road on this one. No, this is genuinely fresh thinking on the subject, that it's neither an either or, that it has to be a both and. That the men themselves give advice and say, get out. It's just and that deterrence, as well as keeping the woman temporarily at least safe, and her children, but combined with deep psychological therapy, makes a difference. I mean,
real work,
real stuff, not nothing surface about it. Oh, bless your heart, you've done it again.
Which a lot of them do. But I mean, a lot of them do. They will go through the motions because most of these programs are court mandated.
Yeah.
So as I say, they're made to go. They're not volunteering and saying, I really need help, I should really go do this. But in the process of the year or whatever that they do this, some of them, but I wouldn't say all of them. I mean, I can see it in the faces of some of the guys that went in the groups and wouldn't talk to me necessarily. But I could go, this is, he's probably not going to change.
That's right.
But but to me, we have to try, and we have to reduce it as much as possible. And especially it helps answer the sort of thing that always grates on my nerves often with women that I know even in my own life who will not leave.
I know.
Guys like this is she just says, look, I don't want to leave him. I love him. I have kids with him, or I want to have kids with him, and I just want the behavior to stop. So this, to me, in a way, I feel like, okay, well, there's some answer for her now that these things do exist.
That's right.
But they don't to the extent that they ought to.
No.
I don't think.
No. Of course not.
And the two places that I filmed, one was in Kansas City, which is called Synergy. The organization was called Synergy, and they are actually a feminist organization. But then they just came to the point where they're also working with perpetrators. And then the other one was is in Topeka, Kansas, called Family Peace Initiative. And both, do really, really well. Both have, great success, and very interestingly, led by women.
Well, that the 5 states, and it includes Kansas, where battery and domestic violence are at their highest, are also the Bible, what we call the buckle of the Bible Belt states, because they're the most, they are very, very fundamentalist and very hardcore. And now, of course, they would be Trumpist states as well. Oh, my dear, we have a lot of work to do. Oh, well, God love you for this
and it makes
film.
me think we've got to do it earlier.
That's
right.
We've
got to start this, as we hear with a lot of these guys, is, I think most of them wouldn't be sitting in front of me if they would have had support earlier.
No.
If when they were going through what they were going through earlier in life. But also to have these conversations, in schools and with, kids when they are younger, and just how to have relationships. People don't know. I mean, a lot of people just don't know how to do this.
That's right.
And how to even have relate to yourself, let alone somebody else.
Yeah.
But, one of the psychologists that I spoke to in the film, he also runs a program called Emerge in Boston, which is another perpetrator program as well.
Oh, I've heard of them.
Intervention program. Yeah, they're very, very excellent as well. And he witnessed domestic violence as a child as well. And he speaks with, Daniel or one of the perpetrators, and basically goes, look, I witnessed it, and it's encouraged me. It's made me do the work that I do today, which is to, stop or, diminish this sort of behavior on the men's side, whereas you've become it.
Yeah.
And so yes, you've had a crappy childhood. So have I. Like, a lot of people have had crappy childhoods. Doesn't mean that they go and kill their wives, or doesn't mean that they behave like this. And that question and that point really bothered me in a good way. Like I thought that was a really important point. I wasn't able to address it in the film, but it's just I've kept sort of digging away at that. And what I finally come to is, when he was a child, when the psychologist David was a child, he, even though he didn't have a lot of love and support in his house, and he was in a domestic violence home, he had teachers, he had other adults that were safe, that were loving and supportive, and mentored him and took him under his wing, because he was very, very bright and he loved books, and so they encouraged that side of him. He had other people, so he had a good community of people to be around.
Right.
And so he had the sort of emotional resilience or sort of cushion there. Yeah. Whereas most of the men that I spoke to
had nowhere to go.
Sexually abused.
They had
nowhere to go. They had nowhere to go, and they had no one on their side. And the one person, many of them talk about their grandmother who loved them.
Yeah.
And who believed in them, but then she died.
And so that was
right. So it's not a complete answer, but I think that's a huge part of the answer. Actually, it's not as clear cut as, well, I've had a difficult life. You don't see me doing this, And it was the same when I filmed the jihadis as well. Yeah. Because I remember sitting with the jihadis, and they go, I experienced racism, I this, I that, and I'd go, yeah, me too. And on top of that, I'm a woman, so I've had all that stuff. You don't see me strapping a bomb to myself. Why not? And it's the same answer.
That's right.
I had my mother. I had lots of loving people in my life. He didn't.
There was some channel through which love could reach me, and I could reach back. Oh, Deeyah, bravo. This is remarkable work, as you always do, but this is really special. And the film is called Behind the Rage, America's Domestic Violence. And if they go to Deeyah.com, they will be able to find a way into the into viewing it until it becomes available for us all to see.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Bless you.
And it is available at Women Make Movies, but I think that's more on the educational side. But I'll sort something out.
Okay, it needs to be on PBS, I think, which it often is when you're with your films. So we'll hope for that. I love you dearly. I hope to see you soon. I miss you hugely.
Thank you.
And I wish you all the possible best. Thank you for being with me on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much.
We need to pause here for a break, but then I'll return directly with fighting words.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, it's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Talk radio with a brain.
Women's rights are human rights, and human rights are women's rights, once and for all. Those were Hillary Rodham Clinton's fighting words. Please settle in, because this may take a while. I write it with a heavy heart. You and I think we know about the dangers inherent in the corporatization of feminism. The tightrope walking required to win advances for some women, but not do so at the expense of other women, or of our souls. We know there are certain sellouts we cannot ignore, certain lines we can't cross, despite Mika Brzezinski's Know Your Value rallying cry and Sheryl Sandberg's exhortation to lean in. We know that with leadership comes responsibility. And we know that we cannot underestimate the cleverly cynical capacity of our opposition to alternate between crushing us and co-opting us. Corporate feminism is not necessarily a rising tide that will lift all boats. On the contrary, a rising tide can drown you. Then along comes something that's hard to believe, yet is painfully true. First, some background. The text following is from the United States Department of State's Executive Summary on Democracy and Human Rights. It is a country report on human rights and democracy in the United Arab Emirates, UAE. The UAE is a federation of 7 semi-autonomous emirates, population approximately 9.8 million, of whom an estimated only 11% are citizens, the rest imported workers. Foreign nationals account for 90% of the population, according to the World Bank. Abu Dhabi is the capital. 7 hereditary rulers of the Emirates, chosen by the ruling families, constitute the country's highest legislative and executive body. Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan, ruler of Abu Dhabi Emirate, is president, although Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan of Abu Dhabi exercises most effective and executive authority. The Emirates are under patriarchal rule, with political allegiance defined by loyalty to tribal leaders, leaders of Emirates, and leaders of the Federation. A limited, appointed electorate participates in periodic elections for the partially elected, only consultative, Federal National Council. The law forbids citizens the right to choose their government in free, fair elections based on universal, equal suffrage. Significant human rights issues include credible reports of torture, arbitrary arrest and incommunicado detention, political prisoners, government interference with privacy rights, substantial interference with freedom of peaceful assembly and freedom of association, including very restrictive laws on the organization, funding, or operation of non-governmental organizations and civil society organizations, serious and unreasonable restrictions on political participation, serious government restrictions of domestic and international human rights organizations, laws criminalizing consensual same-sex sexual activity between adults, and male guardianship laws, making female citizens permanent minors. Political organizations, political parties, and independent trade unions are illegal, as are strikes by public sector employees, security guards, and migrant workers. The government imposes significant restrictions on freedom of the press, including censorship, criminal libel laws, and blocked internet sites such as those with LGBTQI plus content, atheism, negative critiques of Islam, and testimonies of former Muslims who converted to Christianity. Not our sort of government, wouldn't you say? Let's glance at women's status. Muslim women must have the consent of their guardians to marry. A husband may prevent his wife, children, or adult unmarried daughters from leaving the country by taking custody of their passports. Muslim women are prohibited from marrying non-Muslims. The law says a man can have as many as 4 wives. Human Rights Watch, that's HRW, and Amnesty International, AI, have noted that women's rights recently came under heightened security and scrutiny after the emergence of new videos of Sheikha Latifa, daughter of the Dubai ruler, in which she describes the conditions of her forced confinement following her abduction and forcible return to the UAE in 2018. She also pled for an investigation into her sister, Sheikha Shamsa's, abduction and forcible return to the UAE in 2000. Non-Muslim women normally inherit less than men. Legal reforms in 2019 allow a woman to apply for a passport without her husband's written consent, and the government began allowing women to be heads of households. But a judge can deem a woman has breached her spousal obligations if she leaves the house or takes a job deemed outside the law, custom, or necessity, and a woman can lose her right to financial maintenance from her husband if she refuses to have sexual relations with him without a lawful excuse. To obtain a divorce with a financial settlement, a woman must prove her husband inflicted physical or moral harm upon her, abandoned her for at least 3 months, or did not provide for her or their children's upkeep. Claims of physical abuse require medical reports and 2 male witnesses, and it is up to the judge to consider women as full witnesses or half witnesses. Alternatively, women may divorce by paying compensation or surrendering their dowry to their husbands. A divorced woman may lose custody of her children to their father once daughters reach age 13 and sons age 11. Fathers can seek custody of a son younger than age 11 if they believe the child has become, quote, too soft, period, close quote. In 2020, the government decriminalized consensual extramarital sex, but changes to the penal code stipulate that consensual extramarital sex is punishable by 6 months' imprisonment if a complaint is filed by a husband or guardian of either party. Laws may still penalize adultery. Sharia courts still impose flogging as punishment for adultery, prostitution, consensual premarital sex, and pregnancy outside marriage. Abortion is illegal, permitted only when the pregnancy endangers the woman's life or there is evidence the birth will be deformed and not survive. Pregnancy outside marriage is punishable by 2 years' imprisonment unless the parents marry or acknowledge the child. Reproductive care is difficult to access for unmarried and non-citizen women, a significant majority of the female population. The law criminalizes rape, punishable by death under the Penal Code, but does not prohibit spousal rape. In Sharia courts, the extremely high burden of proof for a rape case contributes to a low conviction rate. The government rarely prosecutes reports that employers sexually assault foreign domestic workers. The law does not prohibit female genital mutilation, and private clinics and ritual or traditional circumcisers continue to carry it out. The type most prevalent is performed during infancy and childhood. In 2020, the government repealed an article in the Penal Code allowing men to receive lighter sentences for honor murders killing a female relative found in the act of extramarital sex. The government restricts academic freedom, including speech both inside and outside the classroom, and censors academic materials for schools. Federal law prohibits coeducation in public universities, except in the UAE University's Executive MBA program and graduate programs at Zayed University. Both civil law and Sharia criminalize consensual same-sex sexual conduct between adults. Under Sharia, individuals who engage in consensual same-sex sexual conduct can be subject to the death penalty. Abu Dhabi's penal code allows for up to a 14-year prison sentence for such activity. Racial discrimination remains common in areas like employment. AI reported detention of 375 African male and female migrant workers held incommunicado for 6 weeks in overcrowded cells without enough beds or toilets and deported without due process. Police mistreated detainees with racist insults, forced nudity, and leg shackles on women detainees who refused to eat. In short, as Rathna Begun, senior women's rights researcher at Human Rights Watch, noted, quote, "The UAE has spent considerable time and money portraying itself as a champion of women's rights and empowerment. Now it needs to turn rhetoric into reality." Close quote. You might think listing such appalling practices by any country would give anyone a heavy heart. But why single out Abu Dhabi as the capital of the UAE? Because, shockingly enough, for 3 days surrounding March 8th, International Women's Day this month, Abu Dhabi was the chosen site and host of what pretended to be an international conference of the global women's movement. It was sponsored by the Emirati government, various corporate entities, and Forbes, the business magazine that thinks it's witty to call itself a capitalist tool. It was the brainchild of MSNBC TV host Mika Brzezinski, and featured such bold-faced speakers' names as Mika, Billie Jean King, Olena Zelenska, First Lady of Ukraine, Hillary Rodham Clinton, and Gloria Steinem. Mind you, this did not bill itself as a conference of business world corporate women, who actually constituted most of the audience, although that at least might have been somewhat more tolerable, except for the location. No, it was promoted widely as the Women's Summit, to be held at the crossroads of the world, Abu Dhabi. We will charitably leave aside the idea that the UAE is a crossroad of anything other than extreme patriarchal wealth, horse racing, oppression of women, death penalty for same-sex love, silencing of the press, and suffocation of human rights. We will also leave aside the sorrow that accompanied our disbelief in watching, the main session was televised, distinguished women embarrass themselves and us by their presence. I suppose it's a given that Madame Zelenska will go anywhere to plead the Ukraine's plight, but the context was distressing. If HRC recalls her own famous statement on human rights, the words surely stuck in her throat, and the chyron running under her TV image could have read, "Good God, what was I thinking by coming here?" Billie Jean, who has made clear she has no limits when it comes to raising cash for women's sports, openly proclaimed, "Follow the money," making a viewer wonder just how much the UAE and corporations paid these panelists. The sum must have been considerable. It should have been, if not, they were royally had. It's depressing that such women gave cover to UAE politics. Still, none of them, and certainly not Mika Brzezinski, are considered activists, much less leaders of the women's movement. But then there's my dear friend and colleague of many years, Gloria Steinem. Here's where the heavy heart of lead comes in. That is, if lead could break. Close friends, colleagues, political wise ones weighed in over the weeks preceding her trip to Abu Dhabi, imploring her not to attend this faux feminist conference because of its location, akin to the Holocaust Museum hosting a convention in Berlin in 1933. Because you can't cast a cosmetic cloak of ethics over a place with Abu Dhabi's deplorable reputation, despite all their slick public relations boasts about progressive human rights. No matter how much they pay, no matter who else attends, no matter how many Lifetime Achievement Awards they bestow. What's more, Gloria's physical fragility, she and I share back pain agonies, made for an excellent diplomatic excuse, if one were needed at all. Gloria sensibly agreed. Then she changed her mind. Then she changed it again. In the end, she decided to go. Perhaps it was pressure. Perhaps she simply gave in to other influences. Perhaps she was just tired. She even praised the conference on TV. The Emirates must have been pleased. She knew that if she did go, I would have to write about Abu Dhabi and her going. I told her so in advance, so it wouldn't surprise her, and she said, of course, she understood. Yet I find myself in tears writing these words. This woman and I have been friends for over half a century, ridden to each other's rescue, seen each other through marriages, divorces, marches, illnesses, deadlines, sit-ins, books, mourning, laughter, political arguments, and solidarities, 1,000 ups and downs. We're chosen family for each other. I treasure her dearly. This criticism in no way weakens that. I will continue, as I hope she will, treasuring her and working with her for everything we mutually believe until it's time to turn up our toes. Since I'm now 82 and she's about to turn 89 later this month, time's winged chariot is double parked for us both. It's just that on this occasion, a line was crossed. Since I'm ethically responsible for myself and feel answerable to the women's movement, and since I read my mail, I need to dissociate myself from the hypocrisy that Abu Dhabi currently represents. And yes, I think acknowledging attendance at that conference as having been a mistake would be wise, if for no other reason than people's legacies. Corporate feminism, vast wealth, political repression. These constitute a powerful trio that can celebrate select women to legitimize the trio itself. But how does that speak to the migrant domestic laborer, raped and beaten by her UAE employer, or to Emirati human rights defender Amina al-Abduli, arrested without a warrant, separated from her children, and kept in solitary confinement after her hunger strike and refusal to self-incriminate? Or Emirati Mariam al-Balushi, imprisoned since 2015 for peacefully, quote, publishing information that disturbs the public order, close quote, who was tortured, and who, having attempted suicide, now faces 3 more years of prison for cooperating with the United Nations reports on reprisals. They wait in prison now, at this very moment. Feminists can lean in only so far without falling on our faces. And we might not know our value, but we damned well better know our worth. Grasping this demands hearing one's own whispered conscience. So I have to believe that deep down Gloria knows better, because she is my colleague, my sister, and my friend, and because I love her. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter. And remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag Fighting Words. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and now Instagram at @TheRobinMorgan, and you can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book of poems, Dark Matter, and my brand new novel, Parallax, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.